You were never weak for being soft. You were untrained. Softness without structure collapses, but softness with discipline becomes dangerous, in the best way. This audiobook is not about becoming colder. It is about becoming stable, calm when provoked, gentle when tested, silent when chaos demands reaction. Because real strength does not shout. Real strength holds. If you've ever been misunderstood as weak, this is where you learn the difference between fragile softness and controlled power. Chapter 1. Softness is not the problem. Lack of structure is. You are not broken. You're not weak. You are not too much. You are simply unstructured, and that difference changes everything. Most people who call themselves soft believe their softness is the flaw. They think their empathy is the issue, their emotions are the issue, their sensitivity is the issue. That is a lie. Softness has never been the problem. Uncontained softness is. Water without a container spreads everywhere and loses power. Water inside a structure becomes pressure. Pressure becomes force. Force changes environments. Your emotions are no different. You were never meant to eliminate feeling. You were meant to hold it. But nobody taught you how. So instead, you leak. You leak energy through overthinking. You leak self-respect through over-explaining. You leak peace through reacting. And then you blame your nature instead of your lack of structure. Let's make this clear. Emotion is not your enemy. Lack of rules is. A soft person without structure absorbs everything. Every tone, every mood, every insult, every disappointment. They feel it all, and they carry it all. And eventually, they collapse under weight they were never meant to hold alone, not because they are weak, but because they are untrained. Think about this. Highly empathetic people burn out first, not because empathy is dangerous, but because empathy without discipline becomes self-destruction. The problem is not that you feel deeply. The problem is that everything gets access to your feelings. No filter, no gate, no hierarchy. That is not kindness. That is negligence. Structure is what decides what enters you. Structure is what decides what stays. Structure is what decides what leaves. Without structure, softness becomes chaos. With structure, softness becomes precision. This is where most people resist. They think structure means becoming cold. They think discipline means becoming rigid. They think control means becoming less human. Wrong. Structure does not kill softness. Structure protects it. Think of the most grounded people you know. The calm ones, the stable ones, the ones who don't overreact. They are not numb. They are contained. They feel. They observe, they decide. That order matters. Most people feel, react, and regret. Structured people feel, pause, and choose. That pause is everything. That pause is strength. Softness without structure makes you reactive. Reactive people are predictable. Predictable people are manipulable. This is why soft people get hurt repeatedly by the same patterns, same relationships, same disrespect, same exhaustion. Not because the world is cruel, but because they have no internal rules. No rule for how long they tolerate disrespect. No rule for when to disengage. No rule for when emotion stops being informative and starts being noise. So everything feels personal. Everything feels urgent. Everything feels heavy. Structure changes that. Structure says, this matters, this does not. This deserves energy, this does not. This reaction helps, This one weakens. Structure creates hierarchy inside your mind, and hierarchy creates stability. Here is the truth most people avoid. If you don't set internal structure, the world will set it for you. Other people's moods will dictate your state. Other people's chaos will invade your peace. Other people's expectations will drain you. Structure is how you reclaim authority over yourself. This chapter is not asking you to become harder. It is asking you to become organized internally, because disorganized emotion feels like instability, but organized emotion feels like strength. You must understand this deeply. Feeling deeply is not the same as acting impulsively. Sensitivity does not require reaction. Empathy does not require self-sacrifice. Kindness does not require self-erasure. Those are habits, not virtues, and habits can be replaced. So here's the first instruction. Stop reacting immediately. Not forever, just not instantly. Create a delay. When something triggers you, you do nothing at first. You breathe, you label what you feel, and you wait. That wait is structure. That wait separates emotion from action. And every time you delay reaction, you build containment. Second instruction. Decide your non-negotiables. What behavior is unacceptable? What tone ends a conversation? What pattern means you disengage? Write them down if you have to. Soft people avoid rules because they fear conflict, but rules prevent conflict from owning you. Third instruction. Stop apologizing for having limits. Limits are not cruelty. Limits are clarity. A structured, soft person is not harsh. They are consistent, and consistency creates safety for you and others. Here is the final truth of this chapter. You are not unstable because you are soft. You feel unstable because your softness has no container. That can change. Discipline does not remove your humanity. It gives it direction. In the next chapter, we will go deeper into this truth, why discipline is not restriction and why it is the only thing that makes gentleness safe. Soft does not mean unstable. Soft without structure does. And now you are beginning to build the structure. Chapter 2. Discipline is what makes gentleness safe. Gentleness without discipline is not virtue. It is exposure. It leaves you open. It leaves you drained. It leaves you confused about why kindness keeps costing you so much. This is where most soft people misunderstand discipline. They think discipline is punishment. They think discipline is harshness. They think discipline belongs to rigid people with cold hearts. That belief keeps them weak. Discipline is not cruelty. Discipline is protection. A disciplined, soft person is not less kind. They are selectively kind. They decide where their gentleness goes. They decide how long it stays. They decide when it stops. Undisciplined gentleness says yes when it should say no. Disciplined gentleness says yes with awareness. This is the difference between being kind and being consumed. Look at people who are constantly taken advantage of. They are usually generous. They are usually empathetic. They are usually patient, and they are exhausted. Not because generosity is dangerous, but because generosity without limits becomes self-betrayal. Discipline is what turns kindness into a choice instead of a reflex. A reflex can be exploited. A choice commands respect. Let's be clear. People do not disrespect you because you are soft. They disrespect you because your softness has no consequences. When kindness has no edge, it invites testing. When gentleness has no boundary, it invites invasion. Discipline is the edge. Discipline says, You may enter this space, but only under these conditions. That is not aggression. That is self-respect. Think about leaders who are respected, not feared. They are calm, they are measured, they are fair, but they are firm. They do not explain endlessly. They do not negotiate their values. They do not collapse under emotional pressure. Their gentleness feels safe because it is backed by certainty. Certainty comes from discipline. A disciplined person knows what they will tolerate. A disciplined person knows when they will disengage. A disciplined person does not debate with disrespect. Soft people struggle here because they confuse discipline with rejection. They fear that enforcing limits will make them unlovable, so they avoid it. And in avoiding it, they teach people that their comfort matters less. That lesson gets repeated by friends, partners, co-workers, even strangers. Not because those people are evil, but because undisciplined gentleness trains others to overstep. Here is the rule you must internalize. If you do not guard your energy, someone else will use it. Discipline guards energy. Discipline decides when to give and when to withdraw. This does not mean becoming cold. It means becoming intentional. Intentional kindness feels different. It is steady. It is calm. It does not beg to be appreciated. Undisciplined kindness seeks validation. Disciplined kindness does not need applause. This is why disciplined, soft people are rarely disrespected. Their presence communicates something unspoken. I am kind, but I am not careless with myself. That sentence alone changes how people treat you. Now let's move into action. First, behavioral shift. Stop giving emotional access immediately. Access is earned, not automatic. You do not need to share your inner world with everyone who asks. You do not need to explain your feelings to people who invalidate them. You do not need to soften your truth to make others comfortable. Discipline says, not everyone gets full access to me. Second behavioral shift. Enforce small boundaries early. Most people wait too long. They let irritation build. They let resentment ferment. Then they explode and feel guilty for it. That is not discipline. That is avoidance followed by collapse. Discipline addresses issues while they are small. A calm correction now prevents a painful confrontation later. Third behavioral shift. Detach kindness from outcome. You are kind because it aligns with your values, not because you need approval. If your kindness depends on how others respond, it is fragile. Discipline stabilizes kindness. It says, I will act with integrity regardless of response. That is power. Here is the uncomfortable truth. Some people only respect firmness, not explanations, not empathy, not patience. Firmness. Discipline gives you access to firmness without losing gentleness. It allows you to say no without anger, to disengage without drama, to walk away without bitterness. That is emotional maturity, and maturity feels safe to you and others. This is why disciplined gentleness attracts trust. People know where you stand. They know what you allow. They know what happens when lines are crossed. Clarity creates safety. Chaos creates anxiety. Discipline is the difference. Understand this deeply. You do not need to become sharper to survive. You need to become clearer. Clear rules, clear limits, clear self-respect. Gentleness backed by discipline does not collapse under pressure. It holds. It endures. It commands space without demanding it. And that brings us to the next layer. In the next chapter, we dismantle one of the biggest lies soft people believe, that emotional control means emotional death. It does not. Control does not erase feeling. It directs it. Soft does not mean unstable. Soft becomes safe only when discipline stands behind it. Chapter 3. Emotional control is not emotional death. Let's dismantle a lie that has kept soft people trapped for years. Emotional control does not mean emotional death. Control is not numbness. Control is not suppression. Control is not becoming cold. Control is command. The fear of emotional control comes from misunderstanding it. Most people imagine control as shutting feelings down. They imagine becoming distant, disconnected, robotic. So they reject it. And in rejecting control, they surrender power. Here is the truth. You can feel deeply without obeying every feeling. Feelings are signals, not orders. Undisciplined people obey emotion instantly. Disciplined people listen, then decide. That decision is what separates stability from chaos. Think about high-pressure professionals, surgeons, pilots, negotiators. Do they feel nothing? No. They feel everything, but they do not panic. They have trained themselves to act despite emotion, not because of it. That is control. And control does not make them less human. It makes them reliable. Most soft people confuse emotional expression with emotional honesty. They believe that if they don't express everything they feel immediately, they are being fake. That belief keeps them reactive. Authenticity does not mean impulsivity. Authenticity means alignment between values and action, not emotion and action. Your emotions can be real without being in charge. This is the shift. Emotion is information. Values are direction. When emotion leads, your life swerves. When values lead, your life stabilizes. Emotional control is choosing values over impulses. That is not death. That is maturity. Let's get uncomfortable for a moment. Every emotional reaction you have ever regretted felt justified in the moment. Anger felt righteous. Sadness felt overwhelming. Anxiety felt urgent. But later, clarity arrived. That gap between feeling and clarity is where control belongs. Control creates space. Space allows wisdom to enter. Without space, you react from habit, and habits don't care about your future. Control says, I feel this, but I am not this. That sentence alone weakens emotion's grip. Here's another truth. Strong people are not emotionless. They are emotionally trained. They know how long to sit with emotion before acting. They know which emotions deserve action and which deserve observation. Soft people often act on emotion because they fear losing it. They think if they don't express it immediately, it will disappear. But emotion does not disappear when delayed. It matures. Delayed emotion becomes insight. Immediate emotion becomes mess. Control allows emotion to ripen instead of explode. Now, let's make this practical. First instruction, name your emotion before acting, not out loud, internally. I feel anger. I feel rejection. I feel fear. Naming creates separation. Separation creates control. You cannot command what you cannot identify. Second instruction, delay response. Even 5 seconds is enough. Emotion peaks quickly but fades fast. If you wait, intensity drops. When intensity drops, intelligence rises. This is not avoidance. This is regulation. Third instruction, decide action based on outcome, not emotion. Ask one question. What response strengthens my position? Not what feels good, not what releases tension. What strengthens you? Control is choosing long-term stability over short-term relief. This is where most people fail. They react to feel better now and feel worse later. Controlled people tolerate discomfort now and gain peace later. This is discipline in emotional form. You must understand something deeply. Your emotions are powerful because they are temporary. They come, they rise, they fall. But the consequences of actions taken under emotion can last years. Control protects you from permanent damage caused by temporary feeling. That is not emotional death. That is survival with dignity. Soft people often pride themselves on emotional openness. That is beautiful, but openness without regulation leads to oversharing, overreacting, and overcommitting. Control does not close you, it filters you. Filtering preserves energy. Energy is required for consistency. Consistency is what makes you stable. Stability is what makes you strong. Here is a powerful reframe. Control is an act of self-respect. You respect yourself enough to not let every feeling decide your behavior. You trust yourself enough to pause. You honor your future self enough to choose wisely. Emotion says react. Control says wait. Emotion says explain yourself. Control says be clear once. Emotion says prove your pain. Control says protect your peace. This is how softness becomes grounded. This is how sensitivity becomes intelligence. This is how gentleness becomes strength. And notice this, the more control you build, the safer you feel inside. The safer you feel inside, the less you need external validation. The less validation you need, the harder you are to manipulate. Control creates independence. Independence creates calm. Calm creates authority. That authority is quiet but undeniable. In the next chapter, we go deeper into that quiet authority. We will explore why stability is silent power and why the calmest person in the room always wins. Soft does not mean unstable. Soft becomes dangerous when it learns control. Chapter 4. Stability is silent power. Power does not announce itself. It does not argue. It does not chase attention. It does not react loudly to prove strength. Power is quiet. And silence, when rooted in stability, is intimidating in the deepest way. Most people misunderstand power. They think power looks aggressive. They think it looks dominant. They think it looks like control over others. Real power is control over self, and self-control is silent. The most stable person in the room rarely speaks first. They rarely explain themselves twice. They rarely rush to be understood. They observe, and observation is power. Instability is noisy. It justifies, it reacts, it defends, it escalates. Stability does none of that. Stability waits, and waiting unnerves unstable people. Think about conflict. The person who raises their voice first has already lost leverage. The person who reacts emotionally first has surrendered control. The calm person holds the upper ground without lifting a finger. That is silent power. Soft people often believe they must explain their calm, or soften it, or apologize for it. They think silence is rude. They think calmness looks uncaring. That belief keeps them weak. Silence backed by clarity is not avoidance. It is dominance without aggression. Stability communicates something powerful without words. I am not threatened by this. That message alone changes dynamics. People test instability. They respect stability. You must understand this. Chaos looks for reaction. Drama feeds on response. Manipulation depends on emotional movement. When you stay still, chaos starves. This is why stable people become natural leaders, not because they demand authority, but because they radiate control. Others sense it. In emergencies, people don't follow the loudest voice, they follow the calmest presence. That calmness is trained, it is not personality, it is practice. Unstable calm is suppression, and it cracks. Stable calm is grounded, and it holds. Here's the difference. Suppression hides emotion, stability contains it. Suppression feels tense, stability feels relaxed. You can feel the difference in someone's presence. One feels tight, the other feels anchored. Anchored people do not drift with every emotional wave. They have weight. Weight creates gravity. Gravity draws respect. Let's talk about silence. Silence is not absence. Silence is space. Space allows others to reveal themselves. When you stop filling silence with explanation, others start filling it with truth. Unstable people rush to fill silence. Stable people let it work for them. This is a discipline, and discipline is what turns softness into strength. Soft people often speak too soon. They explain their intentions, they clarify their feelings, they defend their character. They believe being understood will protect them. It does not. Clarity protects you. Over-explanation exposes you. Stability means saying less and meaning more. It means responding, not reacting. It means choosing when to speak instead of being pulled into noise. Here is a key rule. The calmer you are, the more weight your words carry. Yelling cheapens language. Silence sharpens it. This is why stable people rarely repeat themselves. They don't need to. Their consistency speaks for them. Now let's move into behavior. First instruction, slow your physical responses. Lower your voice, slow your movements, relax your face. The body trains the mind. A calm body creates a calm nervous system. Second instruction, do not rush to resolve emotional tension. Discomfort does not mean danger. Let awkwardness exist. Let misunderstanding sit. Stability is tolerating emotional friction without panic. Third instruction, choose your words like tools. Speak only when your words add structure. If your words are emotional discharge, pause. If your words create clarity, speak. Silence is often the strongest option. Understand this deeply. You do not need to prove you are calm. You show calm by not needing to prove anything. This is why silence unsettles manipulative people. They rely on reaction to feel powerful. Your stability removes their leverage. And this is important. Stability does not mean disengagement from life. It means engagement without volatility. You still care, you still feel, you still act, but you act from center, not from surge, from ground, not from impulse. This makes you predictable to yourself and unpredictable to others. Predictable to yourself means reliable. Unpredictable to others means hard to manipulate. That combination is rare and powerful. Here is the deeper truth. People trust stability instinctively. They feel safe around it. That safety turns into influence. Influence turns into authority. Authority turns into leadership. All without force, all without noise, all without aggression. That is silent power. And silent power is what soft people are meant to embody. Not loud dominance, not emotional withdrawal, but grounded presence. In the next chapter, we expose the enemy of stability, reactivity. Why reactive people are easy to control and why mastering your reactions makes you untouchable. Soft does not mean unstable. Soft becomes powerful when stability becomes your default.
Chapter 5. Reactive people are easy to control. If someone can trigger you, they can use you. This is not an insult. It is a warning. Reactivity is not passion. It is exposure. And exposed people are predictable. Predictable people are controllable. Every manipulator knows this. Every toxic person relies on this. Every chaotic environment feeds on this. They don't need power over you. They only need access to your reactions. Soft people are often reactive because they care. They care about fairness. They care about being understood. They care about harmony. That care becomes a weakness when it is unguarded, because the moment someone learns how to provoke you, they learn how to steer you. Think about arguments. Who loses control first? Who raises their voice? Who rushes to defend themselves? That person has already lost leverage, not because they are wrong, but because they are reacting. Reaction is obedience to stimulus. Someone pushes, you respond. Someone insults, you explain. Someone withdraws, you chase. This is not choice. This is conditioning. Reactive people live at the mercy of external input. Their mood depends on tone. Their confidence depends on validation. Their peace depends on other people behaving well. That is not strength. That is emotional dependency. Here's the hard truth. The world does not need to defeat reactive people. It only needs to poke them. A comment, a look, a delay, a silent treatment, and suddenly the reactive person spirals, overthinking, explaining, self-doubt. This is why reactivity is dangerous, not because emotion is bad, but because uncontrolled emotion hands away power. Stable people do not eliminate triggers. They eliminate automatic responses. That is the difference. Triggers are unavoidable. Reactions are optional. Reactive people believe their reactions are justified, and often they are, but justification does not equal effectiveness. Just because a reaction makes sense does not mean it serves you. Power asks a different question. Does this response strengthen my position? If the answer is no, you wait. Waiting breaks the pattern. Manipulation relies on speed, pressure, urgency, escalation. Reaction feeds that machine. Pause starves it. This is why silence unnerves people who want control. They need you to move emotionally. When you don't, they reveal themselves. Reactive people argue content. Stable people observe behavior. That shift alone changes everything. Let's talk about emotional bait. Bait looks like disrespect, dismissal, passive aggression, withholding. The goal is not truth. The goal is reaction. When you react, the bait worked. Now the other person controls the tempo. Here's the discipline. Do not respond to bait immediately. You don't ignore it forever. You delay it. Delay forces clarity. It gives you time to choose a response that protects you. Reactive people fear delay because they think silence equals weakness. It does not. Silence is ambiguity, and ambiguity is uncomfortable for manipulators. They want certainty. They want to know they got to you. When you stay still, they lose feedback. No feedback means no control. Now let's talk about behavior. First instruction: interrupt your reaction cycle. The moment you feel the urge to respond emotionally, stop. Breathe once. Ask, am I about to react or respond? That question alone shifts your nervous system. Second instruction: refuse to explain yourself under pressure. Pressure creates poor communication. If someone demands immediate explanation, They're seeking control. You're allowed to say, "I'll respond when I'm ready." That sentence is power. Third instruction, watch patterns, not moments. Reactive people obsess over single events. Stable people observe repetition. One rude comment means nothing. A pattern means everything. Respond to patterns, not emotions. This keeps you grounded. Here's another uncomfortable truth. Some people provoke reactions to feel significant. Your reaction feeds their identity. When you don't react, they collapse into irrelevance. This is not cruelty. This is self-preservation. Stability does not reward bad behavior with attention. It withdraws energy, and energy withdrawal is the strongest boundary. Understand this. Every time you react emotionally, you teach people how to control you. Every time you pause, you retrain the dynamic. Over time, people stop testing stable individuals, not because they fear them, but because they get nothing from it. No drama, no chase, no payoff. This is why stable people are left alone. Peace is not granted. It is enforced through consistency, and consistency requires discipline. Reactivity feels human. Control feels powerful. You choose which one defines you. In the next chapter, we go deeper into the tool that ends reactivity permanently. Boundaries. Not emotional walls, not aggression, but clear and enforced limits that protect softness without killing it. Soft does not mean unstable. Reactive softness is unstable. Disciplined softness is untouchable.
Chapter 6. Boundaries are a form of self-respect. If you do not set boundaries, you teach people how to treat you. Not with words, with tolerance. Boundaries are not walls, they are rules of engagement, and rules are what make softness sustainable. Soft people struggle with boundaries because they fear conflict. They fear disappointing others. They fear being misunderstood. They fear being labeled selfish or cold. So they stay open, too open, and openness without limits turns into exhaustion. Here's the truth most people avoid. Every time you tolerate what hurts you, you lower your own value in your mind. That internal lowering is felt by others. Respect starts inside. Boundaries are how you signal self-respect without aggression. A boundary says, "This is where I end." Not angrily, not emotionally, calmly. Undisciplined people hope others will notice their discomfort. Disciplined people state their limits. Hope is not a strategy. Clarity is. Let's be precise. A boundary is not a threat. A boundary is not an explanation. A boundary is not a debate. It is information followed by action. Soft people often explain their boundaries too much. They apologize. They justify. They soften the message until it disappears. That is not a boundary. That is a request for permission. Permission seeking invites violation. Boundaries do not ask, they state, and then they hold. This is where most people fail. They speak boundaries, but they don't enforce them. So the world learns a dangerous lesson. Your limits are flexible. Flexible limits are ignored. Firm limits are respected. Here is the key rule. A boundary without enforcement is just a suggestion. Enforcement does not mean punishment. It means consequence. If someone crosses a line, access is reduced. Time is limited. Energy is withdrawn. No drama, no lectures, just consistency. Consistency trains behavior better than emotion ever will. Soft people fear enforcement because they think it makes them harsh. It doesn't. It makes them reliable. People trust those who are consistent, even when they don't like the boundary.
Think about this. The most respected people are not the most accommodating. They are the clearest. You always know where you stand with them. That clarity feels safe. Chaos does not feel safe. Unclear people create anxiety. Boundaried people create stability. This is why boundaries strengthen relationships. They remove guessing. They remove resentment. They remove silent anger. Boundaries protect both sides. Now let's get practical. First instruction: identify your energy leaks. Where do you feel drained after interaction? Where do you feel resentful? Where do you feel obligated? Those are boundary violations. Emotion is a signal. Listen to it, then act. Second instruction: state boundaries early and simply. No backstory, no over-explaining. I'm not available for that. I don't accept that tone. I need space right now. Short sentences carry strength. Long explanations invite negotiation. Third instruction: follow through calmly. If the boundary is crossed, you do less. Less contact, less access, less availability. You don't announce it, you act it. Silence paired with consistency teaches faster than words ever will. Here is a hard truth. People who benefit from your lack of boundaries will resist them. That resistance does not mean you are wrong. It means the dynamic is changing. Discomfort is the price of self-respect. Pay it once or pay exhaustion forever. Boundaries feel uncomfortable at first, then they feel normal. Then they feel empowering. Then they feel non-negotiable. This progression is discipline, and discipline protects softness. Without boundaries, softness becomes resentment. With boundaries, softness remains clean. Clean kindness is powerful. Resentful kindness is toxic to you. You must understand this. You do not owe access to everyone. You do not owe emotional labor on demand. You do not owe explanations for your limits. Your responsibility is to be clear, not to be liked. Being liked fades. Self-respect compounds. And here's something important. Boundaries are not about controlling others. They are about controlling your participation. You cannot control behavior. You can control proximity. You can control exposure. You can control availability. That is enough. When you stop begging people to change and start adjusting your access, your entire life shifts. Drama fades, energy returns, clarity strengthens. Soft people don't need thicker skin. They need stronger boundaries. Boundaries turn softness into stability, and stability turns gentleness into authority. In the next chapter, we tackle one of the most dangerous habits soft people have: over-explaining. Why the need to justify yourself weakens your presence, and how discipline teaches you to stand without explanation. Soft does not mean unstable. Soft with boundaries becomes unshakable.
Chapter 7: The Discipline of Not Explaining Yourself. Over-explaining is not clarity. It is insecurity wearing politeness. Soft people explain themselves too much because they fear being misunderstood. They fear being judged. They fear being seen as wrong. So they talk, they justify, they add context, they soften statements until nothing firm remains. And in doing so, they give away authority. Here is the hard truth. The more you explain yourself, the less people trust your position. Confidence does not argue. Confidence states and stands. Explanations are useful when teaching. They are dangerous when defending. When you explain yourself emotionally, you invite debate. When you explain yourself repeatedly, you signal doubt. Doubt invites pressure. Pressure invites manipulation. This is why over-explainers are often talked over, ignored, or challenged.
not because they are wrong, but because they appear unsure. Stability does not require witnesses. You do not need permission to hold a boundary. You do not need agreement to make a decision. You do not need understanding to move forward. Soft people confuse explanation with kindness. They think explaining protects relationships. It doesn't. Consistency protects relationships. Let's be clear. People who respect you do not need long explanations. People who don't respect you use explanations as leverage. They pick them apart. They twist them. They demand more. Not to understand, but to control. Over-explaining feeds that cycle. It gives people material. Silence removes their tools. Here's the rule. Say it once. Say it calmly. Then stop. Repetition weakens authority. Silence reinforces it. Think about leaders you respect. They don't justify every decision. They don't argue with resistance. They don't over-clarify. They state direction and move. Movement is power. Staying still in your decision is strength. Soft people often stay stuck in conversation. They believe if they just explain better, things will resolve. But some conversations are not meant to resolve. They are meant to end. Ending a conversation without emotional closure feels uncomfortable. That discomfort is discipline. Discipline means tolerating emotional tension without collapsing. This is where softness matures. Here is the difference. Unstable softness seeks reassurance. Stable softness trusts itself. Self-trust removes the need to explain. Now let's move into practice. First instruction: reduce your words by half. Say what is necessary. Remove the rest. Notice how your presence changes. People listen differently when you stop filling space. Second instruction: do not explain boundaries. A boundary is not a story. I'm not available for that. I won't continue this conversation. That doesn't work for me. No reason required. Reasons invite debate. Third instruction: let people misunderstand you. This is difficult, but powerful. Not everyone needs access to your intent. Misunderstanding is not danger. Constant clarification is exhausting. You are allowed to be clear and misunderstood. Here is something few people realize. The need to explain often comes from guilt. Soft people feel guilty for choosing themselves, so they explain to relieve that guilt. Discipline means acting without needing emotional relief. It means letting discomfort pass without fixing it. That is emotional strength. You must understand this deeply. People who demand explanations often do not want truth. They want compliance. When you stop explaining, you interrupt that pattern. At first, people push harder. They ask more questions. They accuse. They test. This is the withdrawal phase. Stay steady. Do not fill silence. Silence is not weakness. Silence is confidence that doesn't beg. Over time, something shifts. People stop asking. They adjust. They respect the boundary. Or they leave. Either outcome protects your stability. Here is the core truth. You do not owe everyone access to your reasoning. You owe yourself alignment. Alignment means your actions match your values, even when no one applauds. That is maturity. That is grounded softness. Over-explaining keeps you small. Clarity makes you solid, and solid people are trusted. In the next chapter, we go deeper into authority. How softness paired with standards creates natural leadership, without dominance, without aggression, without force.
Soft does not mean unstable. Soft with self-trust becomes undeniable.
Chapter 8. Softness with standards becomes authority. Authority is not volume. Authority is not force. Authority is not intimidation. Authority is standards held consistently. Soft people think authority requires hardness. They think leadership requires dominance. They think to be respected, they must become someone they are not. That belief keeps them small. True authority does not come from aggression, it comes from standards. Standards are invisible rules you refuse to break. They govern how you speak, how you tolerate behavior, how you respond under pressure. When softness is paired with standards, it stops being questioned. It becomes trusted. Think about the people you naturally listen to. They don't demand attention. They don't explain themselves constantly. They don't react emotionally. They are consistent. Consistency creates credibility. Credibility creates authority. Soft people often have values, but they don't enforce them. They say respect matters, but tolerate disrespect. They say peace matters, but stay in chaos. That gap destroys authority. Authority requires alignment. What you say matters less than what you allow. Standards close that gap. A standard says, this is the minimum behavior required for access to me. Not angrily, not emotionally, calmly. This is why standards feel intimidating to unstable people. Standards remove negotiation. They remove emotional bargaining. They say, this is how it is. Soft people resist standards because they fear rejection. They think enforcing standards will push people away. Sometimes it will. That is not failure. That is filtration. Authority does not attract everyone. It attracts the right ones. Without standards, you attract chaos. With standards, you attract alignment. This is why soft leaders fail without discipline. They are liked, but not followed. Liking does not equal respect. Respect comes from reliability. Reliability comes from standards. People follow those who are predictable in values, not those who are emotionally flexible. Emotional flexibility feels kind, but it feels unsafe. Standards create safety. This applies everywhere: parenting, teaching, friendship, work. The people you trust most are not the nicest, they are the clearest. They don't change their principles based on mood. They don't bend under pressure. They remain steady. That steadiness is authority. Now let's talk behavior. First instruction: define your standards privately. What behavior do you accept? What behavior ends access? What behavior requires correction? If you don't define this, emotion will decide for you. Emotion is inconsistent. Standards are not. Second instruction: communicate standards through action. You don't announce standards, you live them. When someone violates them, you adjust access. Less time, less energy, less engagement. No lecture required. Behavioral consequences teach faster than words. Third instruction: do not negotiate standards. Negotiation signals weakness. Standards are not preferences, they are conditions. You are not forcing anyone to meet them. You are deciding who stays. This is not cruelty, this is clarity. Here is an important distinction. Softness with standards does not control others. It controls participation. People choose whether to align. You choose whether to stay. That balance is authority. Authority is quiet. It does not chase, it does not convince, it stands. Soft people often lower standards to avoid discomfort. They tolerate small violations. Small violations become patterns. Patterns become disrespect. Disrespect erodes self-trust. Standards protect self-trust, and self-trust is the foundation of authority. Here is a phrase to internalize. What I allow, I endorse. Standards prevent endorsement of what drains you. They protect your energy. Energy fuels consistency. Consistency fuels presence. Presence fuels influence. Influence becomes authority. This chain is not optional. Break one link and authority collapses. This is why standards must be boring, not dramatic, not emotional. Boring standards are powerful. They are enforced the same way every time. No mood, no argument, just action. That predictability trains others. People know where you stand. They don't test, they don't push, they adjust. This is how softness becomes leadership, not by becoming louder, but by becoming immovable in values. In the next chapter, we dismantle another illusion, that emotional maturity looks exciting. It doesn't. It looks boring. And that boredom is exactly why it works. Soft does not mean unstable. Soft with standards becomes authority.
Chapter 9. Emotional maturity looks boring, and that's why it works. Most people don't want emotional maturity. They want intensity. They want excitement. They want emotional highs that feel meaningful. And that desire keeps them unstable. Because maturity is not thrilling. It is repetitive. It is calm. It is predictable. And predictable scares people who are addicted to emotional movement. Emotional chaos feels alive. Emotional stability feels dull. But dull is durable, and durability wins. Soft people often think something is wrong when life feels calm. They search for stimulation. They overanalyze silence. They mistake peace for emptiness. So they create drama, unconsciously. They re-engage old patterns. They reopen closed doors. They provoke conversations that should stay buried, not because they want pain, but because chaos feels familiar. Familiar does not mean healthy. Emotional maturity replaces chaos with rhythm, routine, consistency, self-regulation, and yes, boredom. But boredom is the price of stability, and stability is the price of power. Think about people who have mastered themselves. They wake up similarly. They respond similarly. They handle stress similarly. There is nothing exciting about it, and that is exactly why it works. Excitement burns energy. Stability preserves it. Soft people burn out because they live emotionally loud lives. Every message matters. Every mood shift feels urgent. Every interaction becomes a story. Emotional maturity removes the story. It reduces life to essentials. What matters? What doesn't? What gets energy? What gets ignored? This simplification feels empty at first. Then it feels freeing. Then it feels powerful. Here's the truth. Peace is not passive. Peace is practiced. It is built through boring decisions repeated daily, not reacting, not explaining, not engaging, choosing rest over drama, choosing silence over argument, choosing routine over emotional spikes. This is emotional adulthood, and adulthood is not entertaining, it is effective. Soft people often fear boredom because boredom forces them to sit with themselves. No stimulation, no distraction, no emotional noise, just presence. Presence exposes unresolved patterns, so they avoid it. Maturity does the opposite. It stays, it observes, it lets discomfort pass without trying to fix it. That ability alone separates stable people from unstable ones. Unstable people need something to happen. Stable people let things be. Here's the difference in outcomes. Unstable people live in cycles. Stable people live in progress. Cycles repeat. Progress compounds. Compounding is boring. Until it isn't. Until years pass and one person is grounded, respected, trusted, and another is still emotionally exhausted. This is why emotional maturity looks unimpressive in the moment. There is no applause for not reacting, no recognition for holding peace, no reward for consistency. Except one. Your nervous system stabilizes, and when your nervous system stabilizes, your entire life changes. You think clearer, you speak slower, you choose better. That is quiet dominance. Now let's move into behavior. First instruction, normalize calm days. If nothing emotional happened today, that is success, not emptiness. Stop searching for meaning in emotional spikes. Meaning lives in consistency. Second instruction, create boring routines. Same wake up, same wind down, same self-regulation practices. Routine trains stability faster than insight ever will. Third instruction, do less emotional processing publicly. You don't need to talk through every feeling. Some emotions dissolve when ignored, not suppressed, ignored. Attention feeds emotion. Starve it, and it fades. Here's a powerful truth. The more emotionally mature you become, the less interesting you are to chaotic people. They'll say you changed. You did. You became regulated. They'll say you are distant. You are, from dysfunction. That distance is health. Do not apologize for it. Boredom is not stagnation. It is alignment. It means nothing is leaking, nothing is demanding, nothing is controlling you. This is what soft strength looks like. Quiet, consistent, unmoved. And here's the irony. The life that feels boring on the inside looks powerful on the outside. People trust you. People rely on you. People feel safe around you. Because you are not volatile, you are not dramatic, you are stable. Stability is rare. That rarity creates value. In the final chapter, we complete the transformation from someone who feels too much to someone others lean on, from emotional participant to emotional anchor. Soft does not mean unstable. Soft, when mature, becomes the calm others depend on.
Chapter 10. Become the calm others lean on. At the highest level of emotional strength, you are no longer the one seeking stability. You are the one providing it. This is the final evolution of softness. Not disappearance, not withdrawal, but presence that steadies others. The calm others lean on is not loud, not impressive, not performative. It is quiet reliability. And reliability is built through everything you have practiced so far. Control, discipline, boundaries, standards, consistency. Soft people often grow up being emotionally reactive because they were never shown stability. So they search for it in others. They attach, they depend, they mirror. But eventually the search exhausts them. The final step is this. You stop looking for calm. You become it. This is not a personality change. It is a nervous system change. A regulated nervous system influences every room it enters. People feel it immediately. They slow down. They lower their voice. They trust your presence. Not because you say the right things, but because you don't collapse under pressure. Pressure reveals character, and your character now holds. Think about crisis moments. Something goes wrong. Emotions rise. Voices escalate. Most people panic. The calm one becomes the center, not by trying, by default. That default was trained. This is what all the discipline was for, not to dominate others, but to be dependable when it matters. Soft people underestimate how powerful this is. They think strength must look intense, but calm makes people safe. Safety creates trust. Trust creates influence. This is why the calmest person in the room eventually leads, even without a title, even without permission. Their presence organizes chaos. That is real power. Here's the truth. The world is full of emotionally loud people, very few emotionally stable ones. When you become stable, you become rare, and rarity attracts responsibility. People will come to you for clarity, for grounding, for reassurance, not because you fix them, but because you don't amplify fear. You don't rush emotion. You don't react dramatically. You hold space. Holding space is strength. Holding space means you don't hijack moments with your feelings. You allow others to feel without joining the storm. That restraint is discipline, and discipline turns softness into leadership. But here is the warning. Becoming the calm others lean on does not mean becoming everyone's emotional support. That would destroy you. Calm presence is not emotional labor. You do not absorb chaos. You remain steady near it. This is where boundaries still matter. You offer stability, not sacrifice. You listen, but you don't drown. You support, but you don't rescue. Rescuing creates dependence. Stability creates growth. There is a difference. Emotionally immature people drain calm people. Emotionally mature people learn from them. You must choose who gets access. That choice protects your nervous system. Your nervous system is now your most valuable asset. Protect it. Because a stable nervous system makes you dangerous in the best way. Unshakable, predictable in values, unpredictable in reactions. People cannot pull you into chaos. They cannot rush you. They cannot provoke you easily. This is not detachment. This is grounded engagement. You are present without being penetrable. This is the final form of soft strength. Not softness that collapses, softness that anchors. And understand this, being the calm others lean on does not mean you feel less. It means you feel without leaking. You feel without reacting. You care without collapsing. You engage without losing center. That is mastery. And mastery is quiet. No announcement, no performance, just consistency. Day after day, moment after moment, until calm becomes your default, until discipline feels natural, until softness feels safe inside you. This is what the entire audiobook was building toward. Not control for ego, not discipline for punishment, but stability as identity. You are no longer at the mercy of emotion. Emotion visits, you host it, then you let it leave. That is power. That is maturity. That is the difference between fragile softness and controlled strength. You were never meant to harden. You were meant to hold. And now you do. Soft does not mean unstable. Soft, when disciplined, becomes the calm the world quietly depends on.
Listen carefully. You were never meant to become harder. You were meant to become stable. Softness without discipline collapses. Softness with structure becomes unbreakable. From this moment forward, you stop reacting. You pause. You choose. You hold your ground. You stop explaining yourself to earn permission.
You stop leaking energy to chaos. You stop mistaking emotional noise for truth. Calm is trained. Boundaries are enforced. Standards are lived, not negotiated. You do not harden your heart. You discipline it. You become gentle, but not available for disrespect. Present, but not penetrable. Kind, but never unstable. Here is your challenge. The next time you are triggered, do nothing. Pause. Breathe. Hold your center. That pause is your power. Practice it daily. Protect it ruthlessly. Because the calmest person in the room is never the weakest. They are the one in control. Soft does not mean unstable. Soft, when disciplined, becomes strength that does not need to announce itself. And now, live it.